What is going on out there? How am I supposed to concentrate? Ah!
If your ass is this easy to beat, you shouldn't be this sassy.
Lord Megatron now understands that the difficult tasks are best assigned to an Insecticon.
Pit-bound scavengers.
Scrap eaters. What did you say?
As surprising and funny as this scene is, there is a continuation of this Vehicon vs Insecticon rivalry in one obscure Transformers Prime comic called Civil War. Whether it's canon or not is up to you, but maybe you'll agree this one isn't too far-fetched of a tale. Now, the short Transformers Prime comics flow in and out of existence on the internet. Sometimes you find them only for the link to later disappear. It's been a long time since I've read any of the Titan comics, but I don't think I ever dived into the Eaglemoss comics. The Eaglemoss comics come from Russian magazines which talked about the show, and each came with a small story. Recently on Tumblr I came across some that have been translated by a fan into English. I read one for the first time about the Vehicons and Insecticons fighting each other again. As a Vehicon fan, I just had to share this short story with you. Sorry for the poor quality of the images. In the beginning, Optimus and Bumblebee easily defeat two Insecticons. As the Insecticons return to the warship, two Vehicons make fun of them and say, "The thieves come crawling back after another incredible defeat." Immediately one Insecticon punches one of the Vehicons, while the other roars and charges the second Vehicon, who bears his blaster. Knockout, once again minding his own business, hears the fight which has spread throughout the entire ship and presumably includes now every Vehicon and Insecticon. Knockout goes running to Megatron to report it, and there Soundwave plays for them the audio of the Vehicons and Insecticons insulting each other. Megatron calls Knockout incompetent at keeping order on the ship and declares that now he will have to take care of it himself. Megatron walks into the Insecticon hive where one ballsy Vehicon is insulting an Insecticon right to his face. Megatron says, "My Insecticon comrades, stop this," but then overhears a Vehicon calling the Insecticon a scrap eater, and the Insecticon calling the Vehicon a mediocre clone. Megatron grabs the Vehicon by the neck and hoists him into the air, growling that this infighting stops now. They will settle their conflict by the rules of Chaos, where each side will choose a champion to fight the other. An Insecticon declares himself the champion and calls for them to show him the Vehicon champion, and he will eat their gears. Megatron goes around the ship, but suddenly every Vehicon acts super busy, all of them too cowardly to stand up as the champion. Megatron is like, "Is there no Vehicon brave enough to face an Insecticon?" And the Vehicons are like, "Oh, look at that, I gotta fix this thing over here." Megatron points at a random Vehicon at a computer and cries, You will be the Vehicon champion. Go to Knockout for preparations immediately." And this poor Vehicon freaks out and says, "Me? What? Lord Megatron? What?" What a beautiful display of Vehicon personality. Exactly how a normal Cybertronian would react to being pitted against a giant beast. In a big room, a crowd of Vehicons and a crowd of Insecticons watch the chosen Vehicon face the Insecticon champion. Hilariously, the Vehicons are so freaking mean, and one of them says, "Geez, who voted for the beanpole?" Another Vehicon hushes the insulting one and says, Megatron chose him personally. They're all clones. How are they so mean that they can make fun of someone who has the same body as them? And they act like they know this guy specifically, and are like, "Ugh, you had to choose this guy." The poor Vehicon is puny compared to the Insecticon, like a sixth of his size, but he stands bravely, with fists raised in a fighting position. Throwing a punch, the Insecticon laughs as the Vehicon dodges it. He says, "The weakling is running away. Ha! This fight will be settled in seconds." The Vehicon clocks the Insecticon in the face with a punch so powerful it throws the Insecticon off his feet. The Insecticons gasp, the Vehicons cheer. The mean Vehicon cries, "That punch was awesome! Go, Beanpole. I'm reading like, oh my god, did Megatron pick one of the unusually powerful Vehicons at the start of Transformers Prime? The Insecticon champion stands back up, massive over the Vehicon, and snarls, "Be proud of that punch. It will be the last positive feeling you'll feel in your insignificant life." But then, the Vehicon punches him in the face again and knocks him to the ground. The Insecticon looks up to the Vehicon once again in a powerful fighting pose. The Insecticon exclaims, I don't understand. Why was this weakling able to defeat me?" The Insecticon is so disappointed in himself that he says, "Take my spark, I'm not worthy of it anymore." But then the Vehicon morphs into Megatron. The defeated Insecticon gasps, "Lord Megatron, you were the Beanpole?" "I used Shockwave's optical illusion filter," Megatron explains. "It showed you the same small Vehicon I had chosen as the champion earlier." Now listen, the Vehicon doesn't really look smaller than the other Vehicons in the comic. It's hard to tell, but maybe he was slightly smaller, like a cloning defect. Maybe that could be why the Vehicons were making fun of him. Otherwise it would be funny that Megatron specifically chose a Vehicon to take on his appearance. What do you think though? Was it a regular Vehicon, or do you like the idea of an itty-bitty Vehicon? Anyway, Megatron explains that he did all this to teach them a lesson. When you fight against each other, you're also fighting against me. So, cease these ridiculous quarrels and prepare to go against our true enemy, the Autobots. The comic ends with both the Vehicons and Insecticons shouting, "Long live Megatron." Now we got some time, so how about we talk about another Vehicon comic? How about instead of a tiny Vehicon, we look at a giant one? From the Titan comics, we have Megatron's Law. By the way, the magazine starts off with talking about Bulkhead's and Arcee's strengths, and asks you to rate them and decide who could beat the other in a fight. The comic, Megatron's Law, comes with the headline, "Will Starscream survive Megatron's fiery fighting fits?" Again, totally up to you to decide if this happens in canon or not. The comic starts off with the Nemesis flying to a volcano called the Gateway to Hell. Megatron is ranting to Starscream about how they should not be losing to the Autobots, which makes sense considering how they have like 1,000 soldiers and a warship versus less than 10 Autobots. Megatron snarls, "Why are the Autobots still walking freely among the human parasites of the planet? Their sheer persistence gives me a desperate urge to obliterate something." Then Megatron chokes Starscream and lifts him up, still ranting. "Every mission against Prime and his infernal do-gooders has failed. Why? Because quite frankly, they're better than us." Megatron puts down Starscream and they walk off the ship onto a ledge around the volcano. Starscream protests what Megatron has said, saying he can't really mean that. But Megatron goes on to say that if they are to win the war, they must create the ultimate army, where the weak are weeded from the strong. He says, "Every Decepticon must prove that they deserve their place by my side." Megatron leads Starscream to a doorway carved from rock, continuing, "I don't believe in half measures. I believe in extremes of experience." What Starscream sees next makes him cry, "What the?" Below are Vehicons in pairs trapped in cages, beating the scrap out of each other in the hot and smoking environment. Starscream, appalled, protests against Decepticons fighting one another. I guess Starscream finally gets a good brownie point because even he is against this. Then Starscream laughs because he thinks this idea cannot possibly work, that Decepticons can't be forced to kill other Decepticons. Megatron says that they shall test that logic. Then two Vehicons grab hold of Starscream and put a shackle around one of his wrists. Maybe those are the two badass Vehicons from episode 1. They throw Starscream into a cage where a voice taunts him, "So, Megatron has finally become tired of his poodle. Ha!" Wait, I don't think Megatron was ever fond of Starscream like he's his puppy dog, but maybe others think Starscream is his pet, because it doesn't make sense otherwise why Megatron hasn't killed him yet. Starscream growls, "If some factory reject is looking for trouble." but then stands, turns, and gulps to see a giant Vehicon. This Vehicon declares, "Good, there's still a little fight left in you. I, Fearstorm, would hate to rip the arms off a spineless bot." Starscream stammers, "But, we don't have to do this. There's no Decepticon law that says we can't be made to harm one another." I guess that implies that Decepticons do have laws. Also, it is nice that Starscream isn't just saying they don't have to fight because he's in the cage now. He was against it even before then. Now Starscream clings to the bars as Megatron leers and tells him, "Ah, but that's where you're wrong, my soon-to-be ex-lieutenant. This is Megatron's law." Damn, Megatron thinks this giant Vehicon will definitely kill Starscream. Megatron adds that the shackle will explode in 10 minutes. Let's just say the Cybertronian time was just translated. The only way to unshackle himself is to use the spark of his opponent as a key. Now, I'm not sure how that makes sense when sparks are souls of light, but anyway. They're already in a cage, but Megatron says, "Open the cage." Then part 2 commences. Fearstorm, the giant Vehicon, about 5 times Starscream's size, starts smashing down his fists trying to squash Starscream. The ground breaks and Starscream dashes away before avoiding a big kick. Starscream says to himself, "At least I can rely on my nimbleness against that lumbering oaf." Megatron reminds Starscream that the clock is ticking, but Starscream realizes the magnetic pull of the volcano is stopping him from transforming. For whatever reason, Starscream doesn't fire his missiles or try to use his sharp, knife-like fingers. After all, we know he uses those in the show when he loses the ability to transform. But Starscream uses his wits and notices the spear-like points on top of the cage. Starscream jumps on Fearstorm like a cat, grabs a bar, and breaks off a spearhead. Starscream lands and Fearstorm tries to smash him with both fists. Starscream leaps out of the way, then stabs Fearstorm's hands to the ground with the spear. Walking up to the giants, Starscream says, "Looks like I won after all. Now, hold still." Something happens between the panels, but suddenly Starscream is holding tubes and wires and a glowing chip. I guess Starscream did use his claws to rip out someone's heart. The spark that doesn't look like a spark at all, but a piece of metal, is inserted into the shackle to unlock it. The cage disappears and Megatron, standing cross-armed, sneers, "I am forced to admit that was not a bad effort, Starscream. Welcome back to the bridge." Starscream thanks him and walks away from Fearstorm's body. Megatron and Starscream leave, with Megatron ordering him, "Your first job as my lieutenant is to reinforce the cell bars in every holding cell. The quality of construction around here is a disgrace." Starscream says, "Of course, my lord. Right away, my lord." But he thinks to himself that if he ever gets his way, it will be Megatron in one of those cages. So, which comic entertained you the most? Do you think any of them are canon? In my own opinion, the first one, Civil War, is most likely to have happened. However, if Megatron has technology that can disguise him and make him look like another bot, then that surely would have been utilized in the show. Imagine Megatron posing as an injured member of Team Prime in order to draw Optimus into a trap. That part of the comic I just can't believe, although I loved everything else and the sassiness of the Vehicons. Their sassiness just gives them so much life that you can't deny they have sparks. As for the second comic, Megatron's Law, as fun and interesting as it was, I don't think it happened in canon either. I used to want to believe it because it showed Starscream having more morality than Megatron, and him being witty and nimble in battle. However, if Megatron really had culled his army to make it stronger, then we would have seen stronger Vehicons in the show. They stayed weak up to Season 3 and never seemed well trained at all. And if they have or can make giant Vehicons, they would have shown up in Battle 2 in the show. But maybe this comic is another timeline where Megatron just got too frustrated with how his giant army couldn't kill a handful of Autobots. Maybe this is an alternate storyline that branches off from an earlier season. I'm sure if we are imaginative enough, this would fit perfectly into a fanfiction. Not mine, but the fans are free. Thank you to the Tumblr blog, Transformers Prime Comics.